On this episode, Oceania braces for its first ever pro competition. There's a former Bundesliga boss flipping burgers at McDonald's, and Malian fans have turned to a fetish priest at AFCON. Hello, welcome to The Sweeper, the World Football Podcast that brings you stories from all 211 FIFA countries and beyond. I'm Lee Wingate.
And I'm Paul Watson.
Happy New Year, everyone. And we're kicking off 2026 with a brand new competition, the OFC Pro League. We introduced the tournament last year, but with the inaugural edition launching on 17th of January, now it's time, I think, Paul, for a full preview. So shall we start by quickly reminding the listeners what it is and which teams are taking part? What is the Pro League?
Well, it's the first fully professional football competition for Oceania, which has 11 full members, 2 associate members.
Yeah, and I think it's quite difficult to get your head around this, really, when you think about how many football clubs and competitions there are around the world. You've got 6 continents, and one of them, up until now, not had a single professional football competition. I think it's only actually had 2 professional football clubs, and they play in AFC competitions, and they are, of course...
Auckland FC and Wellington Phoenix.
Yes, the New Zealand duo playing in Australia's A-League. I decided to try and calculate, as I sometimes do, how many professional football clubs there are around the world. I say when I tried to calculate it, I definitely delegated this to AI. So I basically put in 3 different AI platforms how many football clubs, pro football clubs, are there around the world. And they came up with slightly different answers. So ChatGPT says... a reasonable estimate is 7,000 to 10,000 professional clubs worldwide. DeepSeek said approximately 4,000 to 5,000 fully professional football clubs globally. And Grok said approximately 3,986, which doesn't seem very approximate, professional football clubs worldwide, according to the most recent FIFA Professional Football Report from 2023. Now, when you consider even the most conservative of those estimates, 3,986, to have only 2 from Oceania and none of them playing in OFC competitions is mental, isn't it?
It's crazy. But it's also, it kind of speaks of the imbalances we see, isn't it? I mean, when you see the differences between the reality of teams in Oceania and the reality of teams in UEFA that we deal with the most, they're just so vast and starkly different that it kind of makes sense. This is how football is. There's the one side of the game that's completely kind of full of riches, and then there's the other side of the game that is so different. But yeah, hopefully this will change that, right? This is an initiative meant to kind of be a bright new dawn for Oceania.
Yeah, and we certainly hope it is. Who are the 8 clubs that are going to be taking part in the inaugural Pro League, Paul? We've got sort of 2 groups, haven't we? Because we've got the ones that already existed and the newly created ones.
Yeah, so we've got the newly created ones, which I'll go through first. They're kind of the ones that maybe have been more exciting to us because these are brand new football clubs. So we've got Vanuatu United, Tahiti United, Solomon Kings, and Bula FC from Fiji, who are brand new. And then in addition to them, you have the clubs that already exist, which is PNG Hekari, who are Hekari United from Papua New Guinea, Auckland FC from New Zealand, South Island United, who actually have been rebranded from Christchurch United, but are an existing club, and South Melbourne from Australia.
Which is interesting, obviously, as an AFC country. I think it's important to specify, if you're wondering why we mentioned about Auckland FC playing in the A-League and Auckland FC in the Pro League, this is going to be a secondary side, isn't it, that's taking part in the OFC Pro League. But interesting to see one club competing across 2 continents. We've got the basics behind us now. A lot of our listeners will have heard this sort of basic info before from the episode we did back in October. But now we're going to look at it a bit more fully. And we've got 4 categories to do that. They are format and fixtures, distances and date lines, intriguing individuals, and concurrent competitions. Which one, Paul, would you like first?
I mean, I want to hear you say concurrent competitions more times, certainly. But let's kick off with the key fact that is probably on everyone's mind is when is this thing getting started? So let's start with format and fixtures.
Yes, so the OFC Pro League starts on Saturday, the 17th of January. It will start at 3 p.m. New Zealand time, which is 2 a.m. UK time, because it's GMT plus 13, not ideal. It's taking part across 6 so-called circuit series, which are basically like mini tournaments in one specific host nation. And there's going to be a double round robin format. So what that means is you've got each team playing against each other team twice over the course of the tournament. That takes it to 14 matches. So you've got 3 matches in the first circuit series per team, 3 matches in the second, 3 matches in the third. Then in the 4th series, which is in Honiara in the Solomon Islands, there's only 2 games. And then you've got 3 in Fiji again. So that's how you get your 14 games for the double round robin. And then after that, Paul, we've got the 6th and final circuit series in New Zealand, where each team will play 3 further matches. And what will those be, Paul?
Right, so it breaks into the leaders group and the challengers group. It kind of breaks in half. The top 4 in the leaders group then play 3 further matches. The bottom 4 in the challengers group play their matches. The top 3 in the leaders group go into the semi-finals, and then the bottom team have to play a playoff against the top team in the challengers group for that final semi-final place.
Yeah, perfectly put. And that, of course, keeps the competition alive, basically gives the teams in the challengers group something to play for. The first ever match in OFC Pro League history will be played between Vanuatu United and Bula FC at 3 p.m. local time on Saturday, the 17th of January. Then later that day at 7 p.m. local time, so that's 6 a.m. UK time, there will be a New Zealand derby between Auckland FC and South Island United. Now, we know that despite the time differences, some of you might be super keen to watch these games. And the good news is that according to our contacts at the Oceanian Football Confederation, you will be able to watch those on FIFA Plus. That is the message we're getting at the moment. If you are based in New Zealand, a TV deal has just been announced with TVNZ Plus. They'll be televising just the Auckland FC and South Island FC games, and they are currently working on broadcast deals for the rest of the OFC region. But for everyone else, so that's US people on perhaps on the Saturday, on the Friday night, because it will be the night before, or Europeans watching in the middle of the night, then you should be able to watch that on FIFA Plus. That is the information we are getting. If you're actually based in New Zealand, Paul, what I really love is the ticket prices here. So what you do, because there's 2 games every day, you basically get a day ticket where you can go to both games. And the cost of that per adult is 25 New Zealand dollars. That's £12 for 2 games. And for a family ticket, it's 50 New Zealand dollars. So that's, a day out for a family for £24. And I think when we think about the prices of some competitions around the world right now, that seems particularly good value, doesn't it?
It's great. It's great. It's a really good idea. And what I love is this tournament has got some work to do to establish itself, to kind of show people it's out there. And this will really help with that. It'll also help with getting crowds to games where there might not have been such a big crowd, right? Because you'll go to both. I absolutely love it. The only thing that's made me sad, and it's no one's fault, is this time difference with the UK. So am I going to be up at 3 a.m? I might. Yeah. We've got that track record, Lee. And I really do want to see Vanuatu United, Bula FC. I think that's my pick, personally, of the games I want to watch.
Yeah, I mean, we did watch Curacao at like 3 o'clock in the morning, so I reckon we can do this. And it's such a big moment for football in Oceania, Paul, that I think we're going to do our very best to watch that. Let's move on to our second mini category. That's distances and datelines. Now, this would not be a Sweeper podcast episode if we didn't calculate exactly how much distance every single team involved in the tournament has to travel. And this is a little bit hard, actually, because the location of I think it's the 3rd circuit series in Australia has not actually been determined yet. We presume it's probably in Melbourne, considering South Melbourne are the competing club. So based on that presumption, the team that will have to travel the furthest home, sort of to and from each circuit series is who, Paul? Who are you going to guess for that?
I'd have to guess Tahiti United, right? Because they are just geographically set out there, aren't they, really?
Yes, on the other side of the date line, and that is the reference to the sort of date line in the distances and date line. That's the reference there. So Tahiti United actually are 23 hours behind Auckland, even though they are, not all that far in the grand scheme of things from each other. They will have to travel 46,500 kilometres to fulfil their fixtures, which is 10,000 more than any other team and double what Auckland FC will have to travel throughout the tournament. And they will, each time they go to a circuit series to play a game, essentially be travelling to tomorrow because it's the day ahead. So that's sort of what what sets Tahiti United apart in this whole away days calculations.
Yeah, I really hope, they'll be very familiar with that. I really hope everyone is, because this has phenomenal potential for an enormous mix-up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
At least I suppose when they're travelling, they're used to being the right way round on this one. Otherwise, you could just get there the wrong day, and that would be disastrous, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're fans at home. I guess if you're using live scores apps, they're all localized, aren't they? So they tell you based on what your local time is. This circuit series model, these sort of mini tournaments, do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's particularly suited to Oceania? Why have they gone, do you think, for this sort of circuit series style?
I think it's probably the only way it works, isn't it? Because the flights in that region are just so difficult, both in terms of cost, but also just whether they happen or not. So we've seen numerous examples in the past of teams being either very close to, or in fact even missing games at competitions because they've been stranded in, Fiji, for example, when they were supposed to be going en route to somewhere else. And this just does happen in the region. So I think it's the two, probably, isn't it? The expense and the slight unreliability of making sure you make the connections. And just the distances involved as well are really significant. I'd say this is probably the only way this could work, this tournament.
Agreed. There are also some precedents in international club competitions. There's not many, but there are some. So if we think about, for example, the AFC Challenge League, the tertiary competition in Asia, each group has a different host, and those 3 matches within that group are played in the space of 7 days. So I guess that's a little bit like one of these circuit series. And then you've also got the CFU Club Shield, which is the secondary competition in the Caribbean region that takes place entirely in one country. And in 2025, that was in Trinidad and Tobago, again over the space of a week. So I guess in that sense, it's not completely unprecedented, but obviously most club competitions do follow the traditional home and away format. And I suppose that is going to deprive some fans of these countries these clubs back home that aren't hosting circuit series of seeing their team live.
It's true, but I don't know how much of a chance there would realistically be of an away day. I love the idea of, the 12 of the Tahiti Ultras coming over, but I'd imagine that's just so unlikely with the costs involved. I wouldn't have thought a huge amount of fans would be expecting travel. That said, there'll be communities. So there'll be, I'm sure, a Tahitian community in, for example, New Zealand, and Tahitian community. So there will be support, I'm sure, for each team in each location.
All right, let's move on to intriguing individuals. Now, most of our OFC Pro League focus has been on the clubs involved, but I think now it's time to switch to the most important protagonists, which are, of course, the players. Paul, you and I have both picked out 2 players with interesting backstories. Tell us your first one. Who have you gone for?
So I went with Teanui Tehau from Tahiti United. And what I loved about this is Tahiti United, so far, at time of recording, had only named 1 player in their squad. It's the only confirmed player who signed a contract with them is Teanui Tehau, who is kind of a legend. He's going to be the captain. He's going to be their figurehead. But it's quite funny because it makes him Tahiti's first ever professional footballer, and currently a one-man team.
Yeah, I mean, I think some elements of the Pro League are happening very close to the actual start date. So I'm thinking the broadcast deals, which they're still working on with specific countries, and this as well. When do you think the rest of the squad's going to be announced? Well, the day before? I'm not sure.
It must be one of these things where they are sort of known. They must even be training together, I'd imagine, because I've seen lots and lots of pictures of, for example, Bulu FC training together. They're doing a great job on socials, showing, the players coming together. So I would assume they do know who these players are. They're maybe just waiting to make the official announcement. But, I mean, Tehao is certainly a huge figure to have on board. He's the one you would want. You know, he is the national team's record goal scorer. He is sort of like the big dog. He was part of that team in the OFC Nations Cup 2012 when Tahiti actually won it. I think becoming the only non-independent nation to win a major continental competition. I think that's still true, isn't it? I don't think anyone else has done that. And the only country outside Australia and New Zealand to become Oceanian champions. So he's a legend, and you would start with him and then pick the rest of the team around him. But you kind of hope that might be happening a little bit faster. He's got like 3 cousins, I think, who play for the team. So maybe you can get them on board. Maybe just put a WhatsApp around the family and see who we can get.
I saw he had 3 cousins, and the first one was called Alvin, and I was really hoping the other 2 were called Simon and Theodore, but sadly not. They are Lorenzo and Jonathan, who also play for Tahiti. I think there, Paul, going through sort of the major highlights of Tehao's career, there's one that we've missed out so far, and I think it's the one that grabbed us the most when we were looking at standout players. What has he done twice for his country?
Well, he's played at the Beach Soccer World Cup, which was hosted in Russia and the UAE.
Yeah, you wouldn't think of them, would you, for beach soccer?
If I said to you, Lee, think about beaches, and you know, beach soccer, where would be your obvious locations?
Yeah, Moscow.
Moscow. But now beach soccer in Tahiti is a really interesting thing because they are very good at beach soccer. So when you see beach soccer World Cups come up, they don't often get the coverage they probably deserve. It looks amazing. Tahiti are very much like trading blows with the big boys on that stage. So I think that is really fascinating. That obviously it makes sense. Tahiti's got a lot of beaches. It makes sense they're very good at beach soccer, but that doesn't always prove to be the case. So yeah, he's going to be honing his beach soccer skills and taking it to a very different environment.
The first player that I picked, Paul, is Steven van Dijk. He is a goalkeeper for South Island United. And beyond being a namesake of Virgil van Dijk and also being from the Netherlands, there were several elements of his story which really I thought were great for the sweeper. So the first one is that some years ago, he was playing in the Dutch lower leagues. And at the time of the pandemic, he was without a club. And he did a Pico Lopez. He went on LinkedIn and he started sending messages to lots of people, and he got an invitation to join Vestri in Iceland. Now, we've talked about Vestri. That's the second tier club, but last season they won the cup in the same season they got relegated, right up there in the northwest of Iceland. And he went over to Iceland. He only played 1 game for Vestri. He then went to Australia, then returned to Europe, wasn't sure where to go. So what did he do? He got back on LinkedIn. And this time, he got a message from the Faroese team Vestur on transfer deadline day. And the director said to him, if we want this to work, we have to be very quick. So Steven van Dijk, his printer was broken. He needed to get the contract. So he cycled to the local copy shop and finally arranged everything 15 minutes before the deadline so he could sign in the Faroe Islands. He lived there for a while. He didn't like the wind. We've talked about the fierce Faroese wind, where no part of the archipelago is 5 kilometres from the sea. It's very windy. And now he's decided to, after a spell at Christchurch United, to join their OFC Pro League team. So this is one hell of a journeyman journey, and it's great to see someone that at one point was having to take to social media to find a club, now being part of a flagship professional competition in Oceania.
Yeah, and surely set to be the first man to play football matches in the Faroe Islands and Tahiti during his career, I'd imagine. I mean, shows where the world can take you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is bizarre, but I thought that Pico Lopez was maybe a bit of a standout with the whole LinkedIn thing, but now I'm starting to think maybe more and more footballers that can't find clubs are doing stuff like this, and we just don't hear about them. Yeah, quite interesting. Tell us about your second pick. He was born in Siberia, that's the village in Fiji, rather than the geographical region of Russia, to Indian parents. It is, of course...
It's got to be Roy Krishna. for Bula FC. And this was a big unveil for Bula FC. Bula FC had taunted us with this for a few days. They'd teased that they were going to announce a big flagship name to kind of launch the club. Roy Krishna, you don't get better than that in Fijian terms. This is an absolute legend of a player. He is now 38, so this feels a bit like a kind of last hurrah for him, possibly. But for context about how good Roy Krishna is, he has more international goals than any other OFC player. 44 goals in 61 appearances. And this is not to be disparaging, but, those goals are for Fiji. It's not like he's racked up a load of goals for, New Zealand against American Samoa or something. No, this is a player who has just been an absolute driving force for football in Fiji for so many years, but also has had this great career in Asian football because that's where he's played his club football. He's won the Indian Super League with Mohan Bagan, or Mohan Bagan Supergiant, as we should officially refer to them. But yeah, it's a lovely story. Again, came from quite, an inauspicious background, got his first football boots at the age of 5, which his dad gave to him, using their weekly rice budget, basically to say, look, I'm going to use this to give you your football boots. So came from that and now is the leading light of Fijian football. A lovely story. I actually didn't know he was from Siberia. That's a fantastic detail. I didn't know there was a Siberia where you can be sort of dripping with sweat throughout the year. That's a brilliant one.
There's some great village names in Oceania. I think it's Kiribati that's got a London, Paris, and banana, isn't it? As three of its
and Poland, isn't it as well? London,
yes.
Paris, Poland, and banana.
Yes. Yeah. All right, my second pick is Emiliano Tade. I think it's Tade. He is an Argentine who moved to New Zealand in search of football. He started working as a pot washer. I guess that's just in British English, a washer-upper. I'm not sure. Yeah. And then he completed trials with Team Wellington. He then moved on to Auckland City. He holds the record for playing at the most consecutive FIFA Club World Cups at 7. He's now 37 years of age, Paul, which is young to us, of course, but in football terms, he's twice as old as any other player in the squad. But he doesn't count as a foreign player, because in the OFC Pro League, I think we mentioned on the last episode, they've got this rule where each club is allowed to sign 3 Pacific players from outside their country and 3 international players from anywhere in the world. Now, clubs like Hekari from Papua New Guinea have gone down the Brazilian route. They've got 3 Brazilian signings. But in this case, he has dual New Zealand citizenship, so he doesn't count as one of the overseas players. What he does count as, Paul, is a member of the coaching staff, and that's why he sort of stood out to me, because he's going to be both a veteran striker and an assistant coach to Luke Casserly, which is, I don't know, the era of the player manager. It's not really so much a thing. I think back to Gianluca Vialli at Chelsea and some of the other player managers there's been, but it's not really a thing anymore, is it, in Europe?
No, it's really not. And I think we lost something there. That was a lot of fun there. I once played for a team that had a player manager, and he told us all to be really sensible, no one get any yellow cards because the other team are known for their sort of negative tactics. Got sent off after 7 minutes for elbowing the opposition player, he did. And then yelled at us from the touchline to keep calm.
Oh, we can only hope for some of that in the OFC Pro League, can't we? Yeah. All right, let's round off this preview segment by actually looking at another competition. That's the OFC Champions League, because now that the OFC Pro League is coming in, it's sort of going to overshadow the Champions League, which was previously the pinnacle of Oceanian club football. And the Pro League is taking the spots in the Intercontinental Cup and the Club World Cup. So what does that mean for the OFC Champions League? What is it now?
It's a very good question. I mean, it's still going to be an important competition, especially, I suppose, for these countries who aren't represented in the OFC Pro League. So when this kicks off, this is the preliminary round. This is kicking off in Samoa, 31st of January, goes through to 6th of February. This is going to be for the first 4 nations teams. So it's going to be Samoa, Cook Islands, Tonga, and American Samoa as representatives. And I guess for them, there isn't anything else, right? They are the nations for whom this is their only continental outlet. So for them, it certainly remains the main focus.
Yeah, I think so too. What about the financial disadvantages of losing that Club World Cup spot for a team like Auckland City? They would have made, I think, around $5 million from the Club World Cup, their participation last year. We talked about Christian Grey, the student teacher, scoring the goal against Boca Juniors in that match. What sort of knock-on effect do you think this is going to have? Do you think it's going to create, it's going to completely separate Oceanian football in two, where you've got the rich professional side, and it's going to create an even bigger gulf with the amateur side or the semi-pro side?
I could see that. I could certainly see that happening. It's also a very strange dynamic that you have teams like, for example, in this year's competition, you'll have Central Coast from the Solomon Islands, as we say, Auckland City from New Zealand, ABM Galaxy from Vanuatu, etc., who will be in this OFC Champions League, but at the same time, teams from their country are taking part in a slightly bigger, glitzier competition. I do worry about the competition's sort of long-term viability. Either the OFC Pro League is going to just be a flash in the pan and it will sizzle out and everyone will say, well, what was that? Or the opposite will happen. I don't know how the two are going to quite manage to live together. It feels confusing to me.
Well, lastly, I want to ask you for your prediction on that. Do you think it will be a flash in the pan, or do you think it is something that will succeed in the long term? We obviously want it to succeed in the long term, but much of it is going to depend on finances. What happens when that 4-year Saudi sponsorship deal of 35 million New Zealand dollars elapses after the first 4 years? What is your sort of forecast for the OFC Pro League?
It's a really hard question to answer, that one, and I don't pretend to have any great knowledge, but my suspicion is that this feels like the direction football is going in, this Pro League. It feels like it's backed by a lot of important power players. It has to do well, it has to prove itself, and I think that's what we'll have to see. Will people get behind it? But it seems to me like this is the tournament being pushed forward by the people who really get to decide. And I think there's a real possibility the OFC Champions League just starts to look like a pale cousin in comparison to this.
Interesting. Well, we're, of course, extremely excited for the launch of the OFC Pro League on the 17th of January. And as these circuit series take place, you will, of course, be hearing more from us about them. But for now, we're going to leave it there for part one. We are planning some special blogs and coverage of the tournament over on Patreon. So join us there at patreon.com/sweeperpod to get in on all that fun and support the show. Members of our Ultra tier will also be able to read our piece about the OFC Pro League in World Soccer Magazine. We swapped out our traditional column for 10 fun facts about the OFC Pro League, so you can read that in World Soccer. But for now, Paul, let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back with some stories from Europe, Asia, and Africa. Welcome back to part two. We were spoiled for choice with our story selection for this segment. And as such, there's some great stories, Paul, that haven't made the cut. For example, the team in the UEFA Conference League looking for new wingers in exchange for £4,000 a month and free accommodation with a pool. That hasn't made it into this episode, nor has the French club building a stadium with decommissioned aeroplane parts. But they will feature on our next Patreon episode. So join us for that at patreon.com/sweeperpod. Instead, we're going to start this segment in Germany with a former Bundesliga coach turned McDonald's burger flipper. Have you seen this one, Paul?
I have. I don't know much about it. I saw the headline. I don't even know who it is, actually. So you might have to bring me up to date on who's made that slightly odd career choice.
So he's a German-Iranian coach called Alexander Nuri, perhaps best known in German football for coaching Werder Bremen. I think just under 10 years ago, he was promoted from reserve team coach. He helped Bremen beat relegation and then challenge for the European spots. And since then, I think he struggled to sort of permanently establish himself in football. He's had a series of short-lived jobs, most recently with Kavala of Greece in 2022. And he's decided enough is enough. He hasn't been in football management since then. And so according to the newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung, he has opted for a career change as a McDonald's franchisee, where he will be running 2 restaurants in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia starting this month. It is an interesting career change, that, isn't it? From Bundesliga coach to burger flipper.
It is. I hope they photographed him with the McDonald's flag, the scarf, the McDonald's scarf,
the unveiling,
the unveiling, right?
Yeah.
It's really unusual, isn't it? And I guess maybe this is where you sort of see a prejudice from the fact that I'm so insanely football obsessed that I'm thinking, surely there's a middle ground here. Like, maybe his career wasn't necessarily going the way he wanted, but there must have been other clubs willing to give him a go. He coached Werder Bremen. So it feels like quite an extreme thing. I wonder if he just got completely sick of that football world and just was like, enough's enough.
Well, 2 points here. If he really wanted to go into fast food and stay in football management, he could have worked at either Hamburger SV or KFC Uerdingen. Those would have been the 2 obvious.
Chicken in FC? I don't know.
Yeah, he would have had to move up to Finland for that, wouldn't he? Or is that... No,
chicken in Zimbabwe, I think, isn't
it? Yeah. Quite a long way away, to be fair. But I think also important to specify, he is a franchisee. So what that means is you pay money to own and operate McDonald's restaurants. So it's under their brand.
He's like a director of fast food. Is he like, he's moved up? He's like upstairs now. He's like plotting signatures. It'd be great if he starts bringing in quite well-known players to work.
Yeah, I mean, I had a thought of fast food players. So the best ones I could come up with were Wouter Burger of the Netherlands, Jurgen Kohler, and the other one was Denzel Dumfries. It's got fries in it, so that was as close as I could get.
See, all I had on the spur of the moment, I just thought Patrick Berger. That was my first thought.
Yeah,
the Czechs. Yeah, get him in as a sort of a coach, I guess. Get him as a restaurant manager to sort of
Yeah, he had long hair though. It would have been getting in the fries, wouldn't it? I think no Patrick Berger. Some interesting comments from Alexander Nuri in the Süddeutsche Zeitung interview. He said, I believe there are many in the industry, i.e. in football, who would like to try a different career but simply don't have the courage, which I thought was quite interesting. A lot of ex-footballers going to coaching or they're going to punditry, but there are a lot of people who change careers, and we've got some great examples of some of them. We've got some great submissions from Patreon. So on our Discord server, it is basically like a messaging app that you have on your phone, and we write there, don't we, with all of our Patreon supporters who are active on there. We've got like lots of different chat windows, and occasionally I'm like, right, guys, we need a brainstorm. Tell us, can you think of examples of random post-football career changes? And we got 3 amazing ones from Patreon. So Adam says, former defender Leon Court and his wife ran a company called Viva Brasilia that sold Colombian butt-lifting jeans. I mean, I know you don't know where to go. Yeah, you don't know where to go from here.
I have questions about every aspect of Colombian butt. As you said each word, my brain had to sort of recalibrate and think what these things are.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know butt-lifting jeans were a thing. I also was confused why it's called Viva Brasilia rather than something to do with Colombia.
Too. So my brain was going, right, why is it Colombia? What's a butt-lifting jean? And I was thinking, do you mean genes as in like genetics? Or genes? So yeah, my brain was having a real nightmare with that.
So the player's wife, Chloe Court, explained, Colombia seems to be synonymous with drug cartels, whereas Brazil brings up connotations of exotic women running on a beach in thongs. I'm not quite sure that's an accurate representation of either country, to be honest.
I feel like that's a quote that would get you sort of ostracised by both Brazilians and Colombians,
yes,
right?
Simultaneously. Wheelbarrow, that's the name he goes by on our server, says the former striker Dion Dublin presenting the British daytime TV show Homes Under the Hammer. Now, if you are based in the UK, you will have surely seen this on TV at some point. Basically follows people who buy properties at auction and their their renovation efforts for the property. And Dion Dublin is sort of, he's the presenter, isn't he? He just walks around saying, "Oh, this has got incredible light in here. Those stairs are lovely." That's the career he's carved out for himself.
I have to say, he's really good at it. I mean, if you didn't know he was a former footballer, you'd have no idea. He looks like a completely natural presenter. I can't detach from Brian's Gun. Have you ever seen Brian's Gun on Twitter?
Yeah.
Who make the mashup football videos about like sort of football phrases, and they mash together quotes from press conferences to kind of make a story. They always cut to clips of Dion Dublin on Homes Under the Hammer, sort of saying. So yeah, I can never think of Dion Dublin without thinking of Brian's Gun, one of my favourite Twitter or X accounts.
It is excellent, isn't it? The last one, Cerberus Forsyth, says, the former midfielder Mathieu Flamini is a biotech entrepreneur. Now, doing some more digging, it appears that Flamini has co-founded and currently co-owns a company called GF Chemicals, which makes everyday chemicals from plants instead of oil so that they're cleaner and better for the planet. That's quite amazing, because I think there is this unfair stereotype of footballers not being so intelligent, which I think is rubbish, but this is the ultimate proof that someone is doing something which is actually changing the planet for the better. There are a lot of intelligent people in football as well.
Yeah, there are. And I think one of the things that tends to happen is footballers increasingly now have to choose that path from a really young age. So it's not that they're not intelligent or interested in the world. I think it's just they're encouraged to be so laser focused in this kind of narrow world.
Tunnel vision.
And I think that's the only way you can get to a really top level now, is you have to have that kind of narrow world. And then that's why when footballers do leave the game, for a lot of them it's a real panic because they've not really explored all the amazing things they could have done. So it's lovely to hear when players do, after their career, just say, you know what, I was always fascinated in X, and they just go and do it. It's brilliant.
Now, on our last Patreon episode, we also gave a couple of examples of footballers with intriguing post-football careers, and we've got one each for this. So the one I mentioned on that episode is the Dutch defender Arjen de Zeeuw. The most random fact I found about him, you've got this on your screen, haven't you?
Yeah, that's why I'm giggling.
So he was once named as former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair's favourite Premier League footballer. Not relevant, but it did jump out at me. He has since become a forensic investigative detective in Alkmaar. He's also the captain of the Netherlands national police team.
I love it. I absolutely love the image of him. Yeah. Footballer to detective is a very unusual transition. And what Tony Blair naming him, I can only assume what happened was he was put on the spot, on a phone call, had to Google footballers and just got like an A to Z of footballers. Was like, I love Arjen de Zeeuw.
Yeah, who knows? I think he is. I think he is a football fan, and de Zeeuw played for Wigan in the Premier League, didn't he? But yeah, that's about as far as the explanation goes. You picked former goalkeeper Ali Al Habsi, who is doing what now?
Well, he was, Oman legend, Ali Al Habsi, after his playing career, founded a road safety organisation that was set up to try and reduce the number of driving fatalities in Oman, which are apparently really high for the size of the country, for the infrastructure. A lot of people die on the roads. He dedicated himself to that since his retirement. Was also a fireman before he was a footballer, so he had quite a rich career outside of football.
And why did we come on to talking about Ali Al Habsi? What was the premise behind the last bonus podcast?
So we did our kind of end of the year bonus podcast for our Patreon listeners, was focusing on 6 countries, one from each FIFA confederation, that we feel we have covered least. And it was quite an interesting exercise. We are pretty convinced we have covered every FIFA member, all 211, over the course of this podcast, but some we just haven't covered so much. So this was, everything from Venezuela to Eswatini to Oman. We found the nations we needed to do a bit more on and found some good stories from them.
Yeah, Greece, Dominica and the Solomon Islands in there as well. We heard from Greek football expert Stephen Conturu. We heard from Venezuelan football specialist Jordan Floret. We heard from Riel Kakamura's social media team. So it was excellent. You can listen to that already by signing up at patreon.com/sweeperpod. And at this moment in time, that is particularly important because we don't have a single sponsor or partner at this moment in time. So any support, gratefully appreciated. All right, Paul, we're going to move across to Africa now. I'm going to start with, we've got to talk about AFCON, because even though this podcast is fortnightly, and if we talk about individual games, I guess it gets quickly out of date, there are some stories which are simply pure sweeper. I think Gabon, after their AFCON elimination, you've seen the letter, right? The angry reaction from the sports ministry.
Yeah, and it's a bizarre thing, isn't it? They have disbanded the national team, have they not? Or at least suspended its activities, as well as sacking the coach, which is fairly normal. They've given lifetime bans to, I think it's 2 players, including Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who is, their best known player. It seemed to me like something of an overreaction. Do you not think, Lee?
Yeah, especially when you look at the results, because I saw they were bottom of their group, in a tough group with Ivory Coast, Cameroon and Mozambique. They did lose all 3 games, but their goal difference was only -3. So they were only losing each game by 1. AFCON is a tough competition, and to take all of these measures, it just is yet another example of government interference in football that we see in Africa 10 times more as any other continent, don't we? Like, it just seems to be a theme of African football.
Yeah, it does. You do get it other places. I think this has been an issue in Pakistan, maybe. There's more kind of, cliques fighting over power. But yeah, in African football, this seems to be really common. All the way through to Cameroon, where we spoke about the fact they had 2 coaches just prior to AFCON. They had the coach that the sports ministry had appointed, Mark Brice, and then they had the football federation and run by Samuel Eto'o, who were trying to sack him, but he was saying, well, you didn't appoint me in the first place.
Yeah.
It's an absolute mess, isn't it? And I think I'm under the impression that Gabon's government retracted this. So I think it was genuinely like, when you're really angry and you type an email out and and everyone said, like, the advice everyone gives you is don't send the email when you're angry, right?
Yeah.
This
Wait
is why.
on it. Sit on it.
This is why. No one said to the government, you know what, write the letter, but just let it sit for... So I think they did retract it because they probably realised that all this would do was have them suspended from FIFA, at least temporarily, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's the consequence they would have been most worried about, rather than it being absolutely everywhere on social media and making themselves a laughingstock. So that is the crazy reaction to an elimination. What about the quirkier qualifications? Well, I think we need to talk about Mali, Paul, because they got through to the knockout stages, I think, without winning a game, such as the format in AFCON these days, where 16 of the 24 teams go through, including several teams in third place. They then came up against Tunisia in the round of 16, and that seemed like a pretty daunting task to some of their fans because, according to the African football journalist Mickey Jr., some Malians paid around £4,000 to a guy called Karamogo Sinayoko, who is a renowned, I didn't know these words belonged together, a renowned fetish priest to tip fate in their favour. Have you ever heard of that before, Paul?
You're going to have to talk about fetish priests, Morley. More than either of us ever expected you to. I've not heard the phrase, no.
Yeah, fetish, I just presumed that would have some kind of sexual connotations. But apparently, in parts of West Africa, a fetish priest is a spiritual practitioner who offers guidance, protection, healing, or help to influence positive outcomes. So it is like in sort of Togo, Benin, Ghana, countries in West Africa, this is apparently a practice which Mali employed. And I suppose we can't specifically say it's connected to that, but they did go through, didn't they? They won 3-2 on penalties against Tunisia following a 1-1 draw, and they're through to the quarterfinals now without actually winning a game in 90 minutes. Their legendary journeyman coach, Tom Saintfiet, has said that, we can go all the way without winning a game in 90 minutes, which would be quite interesting if they just ground each opponent down in extra time. But the crazy story of Mali, especially because they went 1-0 down in this game against Tunisia in the 88th minute with 10 men and then scored in the 96th minute. Mad, AFCON. Absolutely mad.
The fetish priest is going to have to be training pretty hard ahead of Senegal. That's their next one, isn't it?
Yeah, they might need to pay him a bit more.
Yeah, something I could just have the guys just sit on deck chairs while the fetish priest works his magic. I mean, yeah, it was a phenomenal performance. Great effort from Mali. And yeah, I loved something. It's basically, I don't know if it's a sort of provocative thing to say, but he was basically saying, we can win this whole thing without winning a single game in normal time. I'm trying to remember if Greece did that in Euro.
No, because Charisteas' header in the final, mate, was 1-0. I only remember the final, but
I don't even remember if I might be kind of over dramatized. It felt like they never really won any games at that tournament, but they won the entire thing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. People must have done it, but it would be an amazing achievement if they were to keep going this way. If they can put Senegal out, then that fetish priest value is going to go up in the market anyway.
Certainly will. We talked about Mali qualifying and not winning a game. Well, even more bizarrely, Sudan took it to another level by becoming the first side in the history of the Africa Cup of Nations to qualify without scoring a goal. Now, they did win a game. Their only goal in their 1-0 win against Equatorial Guinea was an own goal. So this just doesn't reflect well on a format where third-place teams can go through without winning games or scoring goals, does it?
No, I'm really torn on it in a way because, yeah, I think it does slightly ruin the drama of the group stage of AFCON that you're going from 24 down to 16. So it feels like almost everyone is qualifying. On the other hand, what an amazing thing for both Sudan. Obviously, we've talked about the context there for Sudan, country ridden by civil war, players predominantly playing for a club who have had to relocate to Rwanda, Al Hilal Omdurman. So kind of incredible for them to have achieved that and not to take away from that. Similarly for Tanzania to get to the knockout stages.
And Mozambique,
And Mozambique, but only with, Tanzania got 2 points. It is slightly crazy when those teams get through with those and then you look at the knockout stage and the tournament really has come to life now, and it feels like that's because the stakes are just so much higher now that there's one mistake and you're out. That said, Tanzania gave a very good account of themselves against Morocco, so you can't really say they were out of their depth there. They really gave Morocco a bit of a scare, I thought.
Certainly did. We're going to move on and finish the podcast now, Paul, in Japan. Now, we have mentioned on this podcast before that Japan is about to switch from a calendar year to an autumn-spring format to be aligned with the European football season. They think that's going to have numerous benefits. It's going to make player transfers easier because they won't be in mid-season. And very importantly as well, they will be aligned with Asian club competitions, which have also moved to autumn to spring format now as well. But what that means is how do you do that? How do you move from a calendar year season to an autumn spring season? Well, you have to have something to fill the gap. And what Japan have got, they've called it the 100-Year Vision League, which is a great name.
Brilliant.
And it's a mini tournament. It's just like a mini league taking place between February and June 2026. So I thought we'd finish the podcast today by looking into how they're doing this, how one club in particular has been very hard done by, and talk about the return of King Kazu to Japan as well. Kazumura at 59 years of age. He's not the return to Japan, but return to the J-League rather, because he's now playing for Fukushima United. So all of that coming up before we round off today's pod. So, Paul, the way they will do this in the J-League, clubs will be divided into two regions. They'll have a West and an East region, and they will play a double round robin against every team, so home and away. But then what I think is quite interesting is you will then play against the team in the same league position as you in the other region in a two-legged playoff to determine the final standings. So if you finish first, you'll play against the winner of the other league. But if you finish ninth, you'll play against the ninth best team in the other league. So that's how they're going to do the final standings.
Yeah, which I like in a way.
It's new, isn't it?
It's new. It's incredible how there can be new formats at this point, right? We always think we've seen everything, and then there's a new format. I do wonder how dramatic ninth versus ninth playoff for ninth place will be.
Yeah. No,
I think it's not a big hitter, is it?
No, I think that skepticism is well founded, actually. But I suppose it is more just as a formality, isn't it, to work out the final standings. What is interesting is there will be no relegation, but there will be a spot in Asian club competitions. So the winner of this sort of transitional league will get a spot in the AFC Champions League in 2026 to 27. But how do you get an extra spot? Because the places were allocated last season. And so what they've done in order to create that additional spot is deprive the third place team from last season, Kyoto Sanga, who were challenging for their first ever title, of a place in the AFC Champions League. That is, I mean, it's very harsh, isn't it? It reminds me of, we talked about Lillestrøm winning the Norwegian Cup at a time where that switched from, I think, a calendar year to an autumn to spring format. And they also have missed out on a direct Europa League place. Now, Kyoto Sanga are missing out. I think it's so unfair.
That feels totally wrong, doesn't it? And against the context of that, as you say, that Kyoto Sanga, a club, historic club, but a club that have perhaps had a history of not necessarily being at the very top, and then they have this brilliant season where they almost won the league, and then to miss out on that feels even more cruel. It's not like they're a team who are frequently, all the time in the AFC Champions League. So that feels brutal. Was this must have been trailed before the season, because I don't remember this being mentioned when Kyoto Sanga were finishing third. I don't remember it being mentioned at the time explicitly.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the timeline. I'm not sure. But I suppose they must have known, because otherwise it'd be ridiculously unfair to be deprived after qualifying. They can still qualify, by the way, for the AFC Champions League, either by winning this transitional season, of course, or if Kashima Antlers and Kashiwa Reysol, who have already qualified last season, win this competition, or if Makita Zelvia, who won the Emperor's Cup and a place in the AFC Champions League 2, win the transitional season, then they'll be bumped up, and I think then Kyoto Sanga would go into the AFC Champions League 2. But as it stands, they're missing out, which does seem very, very unfair.
Yeah. We'll be cheering them on.
Yeah.
We're now Kyoto Sanga fans.
Kyoto Sanga ultras. Yes, we certainly are. We will also, I hope, Paul, be ultras of Fukushima United in the third division of Japanese football, because they have signed the legendary forward Kazu Miura. I think I said earlier 59. He's almost 59. He's currently 58. He has had a career that dates back so far that he started playing before I was born. So he started playing professional football in 1986, and that makes him the second oldest active professional footballer in the world, behind, of course, Paul,
Mikola Lukovodov, who plays in Ukraine, doesn't he, for Real Farmer in the Ukrainian third tier.
Yes, exactly. He's, I think, 1 year older. He's almost 60. But the club that Kazumira is joining is very interesting, because I think a lot of people, when they hear the word Fukushima, they will have associations of a very tragic event that took place 15 years ago now, and that was the earthquake and tsunami that triggered a nuclear disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi power plant. Incidentally, that power plant was built in the same year that Kazumira was born. Both of them started out in 1967. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the links between the football club that Miura is going to be joining and the disaster recovery, because it seems like the football club has played a really big role in helping Fukushima Prefecture rebuild itself in the wake of this disaster. So they have run things like reconstruction support matches. That's the translation of the Japanese, but they're essentially charity games to raise money for the reconstruction. They have run community clear-ups, and they've had other sort of local outreach efforts where they get in touch with the community, invite kids along, do all of this kind of thing. So that's really lovely. Interestingly, the animal on their crest it's called a ho'o bird, which is a mythical bird in Japanese folklore that is often compared to the phoenix in the Western world, which is associated with rebirth and renewal. So I think that's sort of an apt badge for them to have in the wake of this disaster. And they've also announced plans for the construction, and I've never heard this phrase in football before, Japan's first circular timber stadium, which will be regarded as a symbol of recovery for the region, so says the press release. But I would recommend everyone to go and Google the new stadium in Fukushima, because I simply cannot do it justice. It's like the Asian version of the Pancha Arena, the Puskas Academia Stadium with the wooden design all around it. If it looks anything like the draft pool, it's going to be beautiful.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'm guessing that's to do with also being more environmentally friendly, isn't it, I think? Because, for example, Forest Green Rovers are moving into a stadium that I think is quite similar, and they are known as the greenest team in the world. I think the idea is that these new kind of stadiums are much more environmentally friendly, and I've got to take a look at this picture now. You've really sold it.
Yeah, go Google it. I think we'll leave it there for today. I don't think we have time for On the Spot, actually. But we will, of course, be back on the main feed on Wednesday, the 21st of January. In the meantime, join us on Patreon at patreon.com/sweeperpod for an extra episode on Wednesday, the 14th of January, and plenty more bonus content besides. It's a Happy New Year from me.
Happy New Year from me.
See you soon.